Max Payne is a man who's suffered beyond reasonable limits. 9 years have passed since the last installment in the series, but little has changed for its troubled protagonist. Max remains a man haunted by the death of his wife and child, and who continues to find solace in brown liquor and white pills. But this isn't just a lazy retread. Max Payne 3 relocates most of the action away from the ramshackle tenements and scum-ridden streets of his native New York. Max finds himself amongst the seedy nightclubs and hostile favelas of Sao Paulo, working as the private bodyguard to Rodrigo Branco. Unsurprisingly, things don't work out for Max. Rodrigo's wife, Fabiana, is kidnapped, which sets in motion a chain of events that draws Max into a much larger, darker story.
Well, it wasn't perfect. In fact, it wasn't much good at all, but it was going to have to do.
This game has a great script. It's full of sardonic quips and elaborate metaphors, entirely in keeping with its hard-boiled heritage.
I wouldn't know right from wrong if one of them was helping the poor and the other was banging my sister.
And it's all fueled by a standout performance from James McCaffrey. It's bitter and gnarled, but it's also a surprisingly nuanced turn.
There's two types of people. Those who spend their lives trying to build a future, and those who spend their lives trying to rebuild the past.
The game's pacing might not be for everyone. The story is structured around frequent cutscenes, which not only dictate the game's narrative, but also disguise the loading screens. Some players might find their frequency too intrusive, that control is being taken away too often. Ultimately, it's a trade-off, and in return, you get a brilliantly compelling story. If you buy into Max's plight, the cutscenes quickly become engrossing, and it's a joy to see them seamlessly bleed into the ensuing action. Max Payne 3 really showcases how games can be a writer's medium.
Nothing like the view of extreme poverty to make a penthouse cocktail party really swing.
The influence of film noir permeates throughout. The non-linear structure, the jaded first-person narrative, the seduction, corruption, and deception. No one here can be trusted. But this time around, the shadows and snow of New York City have been replaced with the baking heat and blinding light of South America. And it's all filtered through a raft of cinematic effects. Scan lines, chromatic aberration, shifting film stock. At first, it seems too much, too distracting. But after a while, it settles down and becomes part of the game's distinctive texture. Max Payne 3 is uncompromisingly violent. High-caliber bullets destroy faces and blood flows freely, all emphasized by the game's kill camera. When you dispatch the last guy in a room, the camera shifts perspective and slowly tracks the path of the final bullet. It looks wonderfully cinematic, but the style never sublimates the violence. It remains grisly and shocking all the way through. Production values are high and the level of detail is astonishing. And this attention to detail extends to other aspects of the game. Each time you pick up a bottle of pills to replenish your health, you won't have an endlessly replayed soundbite, but a new justification for why Max just can't kick his habit.
A little consolation prize for having my assault on the free bar cut short. The spoils of a desperate man. I'd woken up with a headache, and it was only getting worse.
Gameplay is simple, elegant, and consistently satisfying. Once you've mastered Max's signature moves, bullet time and shoot dodge, you'll be orchestrating elaborate shootouts on the move. It's a little frustrating that situations can't be tackled in alternate ways. At certain points in the game, Max is given a silenced weapon, but it's not long before all hell's breaking loose. The game really only lets you play it on its own terms. All-out carnage. The single-player story lasts around 10 to 12 hours, but Max Payne 3 has a variety of arcade modes, from score challenges to speedruns, to keep you busy once you finish the main story. But it's the multiplayer that's the real surprise. It's chaotic fun. Gang Wars in particular attempts something rather ambitious, trying to weave narrative into what is usually a player-determined mode. You'll play 4 rounds, with different objectives that alter depending on what happens in each of them. This racks up a point advantage going into the 5th and final round, which always takes the form of an all-out deathmatch. It's not entirely successful. You're not left with enduring memories of these vignettes, but it doesn't really matter since the gameplay itself is relentless fun.
That didn't mean much. There was always something rotten in the air.
There are plenty of games which are celebrated for their innovative gameplay but lack a real story or a sense of character. Max Payne 3 is a different proposition. The gameplay is simple yet satisfying, but it's entirely in the service of a strongly authored narrative. Players aren't at the liberty to explore, and some might find this unnecessarily controlling, but in return for your freedom, you're rewarded with a mature, darkly engrossing piece of genre fiction. For all things Max Payne, head over to IGN.com.